So welcome to the Pando Days 2023 premieres. I'm Eugene Shirley, co-hosting these events with Matthew Manos. Check the Pando Days 23 webpage to see the premiere week schedule for all 16 projects. Last Friday, we heard from UCLA about their plans to scale their Pando Days project from a previous year across the county. Cal State Fullerton told us about a student team software that connects food banks, food pantries, and end users to get the food that's needed to where it needs to go faster. And Cal State Long Beach told us about two fascinating projects, from sea turtles to beach trash. This morning, we're back to ArtCenter with the school's third Pando Days project this year, this one from the Transportation Department. As a reminder, all 16 premiere events are recorded. These recordings, along with all project materials, will be posted on each team's respective webpage on the Pando website throughout the month. Recordings are then judged by a distinguished panel of specialists in the first quarter of the new year. Then on April 14, we gather key people from across the whole of LA County to honor some of the best of these initiatives and help move as many of them as possible forward. We call it the Pando Sustainability Awards, held at Caltech. So let's start right in with ArtCenter College of Design Transportation. Our format is this: the team has 15 minutes for its presentation, followed by 15 minutes Q&A from our panel of experts. The ArtCenter Transportation team is led by Professor Lucien Roska and Richard Peltier. This is the second season that ArtCenter's transportation program has been involved in Pando Days. I think we all remember their stunning vision of our transportation future from Pando Days 2022. This season's project extends last year's theme to investigate the future of mobility in the LA metro area, but with a focus on Long Beach. Fast forwarding us to 2045 or thereabouts, through the lens of sustainability applications. Lucien, everyone is hungry for a positive vision of the future. I know. If you can give us that, I think we'd all be thrilled. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. So me and Richard, we are co-teaching this class called Urban Form class, and we actually give a design brief to the students, and it's about creating a vision. We don't really design something specifically, but we look far in the future, and then we try to create the way there. We try to understand what's the best way to get to that optimal vision we have for our city, for Los Angeles, for 2045. I'm gonna say just a few more words. We practically look at three main elements. We consider that developing a new mobility system is not enough. A mobility system needs also a infrastructure, a new infrastructure. So we look at new ways of designing the infrastructure for our cities. And then, as we know, in the future, everything will be connected. So we also look at technology. Then mainly we look at mobility, transportation, we looked at infrastructure for mobility, and then we looked at technology. And then probably this is clear enough, so I would let the students introduce their project.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our presentation of our Long Beach Urban Mobility Vision for 2045. This is an abridged presentation of a two-term studio project to produce a mobility vision for a selected city in Los Angeles County. In this presentation, we will overview our vision and its important insights and outcomes. We are a four-man team of graduate transportation and systems design master students from ArtCenter College of Design. Our project focuses on many of the Los Angeles County sustainability goals, including goals 1, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 11. From those goals in our research, we aimed for 6 major design objectives: equitable mobility, multimodal functionality, wise city ideology, locally tailored implementation, bottom-up mentality and informality, and reappraisal of the port and logistics. Let's dive into our story. First, some background. No longer governed by a car-centric culture and life, our first subject, Faisal, goes to meet his biking group in downtown Long Beach. He is a long-term resident of Long Beach and has experienced its evolution since he immigrated from Egypt in 2010. Faisal wakes up early. Last night he set his alarm early as he was automatically alerted of today's heat. He leaves his house on the Upper West Side of Long Beach and is greeted with the sight of people leisurely biking, walking in groups, or taking their computers to the outdoor work park. He hops on his bike and begins pedaling through the residential streets. As he rides, he notes that it is so nice to have streets which accommodate bikers and slow down vehicles so that kids can play outside. As he bikes, he thinks back to 2023. The streets were long and straight with cars zooming past much faster than the speed limit. Without shade, the summer cycling was brutal. Without the covered boulevards, the rain made it impossible to bike in the winter. Now the streets in the suburbs are curved for slower traffic speeds, and the niches allow for temporary or small permanent local small business shops. He comes back to reality and almost passes by the morning pastry truck, which stays a few hours in the flexible local business space at the corner of Santa Fe Ave and Willow Street. After grabbing a freshly baked pastry, he starts cycling on the PCH-covered micro-mobility boulevard. He flashes back to 2023. The PCH bridge used to be awful to cross. There were so many cars always trying to cross that he'd been hit a few times. They never made room for cyclists. Plus, the river used to really stink. But now, it is beautiful. There is plenty of room to walk and ride without the traffic of giant cars. A breeze blows past him which smells of the sea. He reaches downtown and navigates around the tram. He looks up at the high-rises around him and takes a deep breath. The air is clean and cool with the scent of yesterday's rain. The city center is mostly a no-car zone in 2045, which was achieved through the use of congestion pricing. There are still cars on a few main boulevards, but they are all lane bike priority, so cars rarely venture through. He meets his friends at the Downtown Ocean Boulevard Metro Mobility Center. This mobility center is one of a few through Long Beach which help ensure connectivity throughout every section of the city. His friends hop on shared e-bikes. As a group, they bike down Shoreline Drive and past one of the major car buffer zones, the Long Beach Aquarium parking structures. And across the bridge, they reach the port recreational area. An eVTOL flies overhead to Long Beach Port. On board the eVTOL, Alexis finishes sending an email. She knows she would have been late for her meeting in San Diego without the ease of this small, fast point-to-point option. With that part of her day done, she can sit and close her eyes for a moment. The eVTOL lands near the mobility hub section of the port. She receives a heat warning as she exits the vehicle. She uses her umbrella to mist and shield herself from the sun. She quickly moves out of the sun into the mobility center. Instead of rushing to the platform, she instead stops and looks at the public art wall outside of the station. She knows that even if she misses one Metro Rapid train, she'll be able to catch the next one, which will be in only a few minutes. A Metro Rapid train rushes past. On the platform, she talks to the family standing next to her. The kids are very excited because they are on their way to a football game at the Rose Bowl. On board the Metro RT, there are people from all walks of life. Commuters heading home, tourists on their way to dinner in Santa Monica, an elderly couple dressed up for the opera, and a young couple off to stargaze in the mountains. The Metro Rapid train's flexible layout can accommodate micro-mobility devices and lock-in wheelchairs. Alexis's destination is just one stop away, the edge of Long Beach, where she will be picking up her car from the buffer zone. The city of Long Beach built these buffer zones for the accessibility needs of people who still live in auto-oriented cities. Although each year that goes by, more cities begin their transition to car-free movement, but the power of the autonomous car industry is pushing back a little bit. While she is stuck in traffic at the edge of Long Beach on her way back to Southgate, she thinks to herself, I'd rather spend a few minutes on a tram than pay all this money to subscribe to this car. To no one's surprise, the traffic continues all the way home. Due to frustration, she takes over control of the car and speeds home once any traffic subsides. She almost hits a cyclist. Stuck in car traffic again, she puts the autonomous mode back on and looks out the window, daydreaming while looking at a cargo airship in the sky on its way to the port of Long Beach. The airship lowers down and docks at the port to unload its cargo. The containers are moved to rails to begin the distribution process. Containers which are moving further than the city limits split off from the local containers and move onto the freeway. On the freeway, the logistics pods occupy their own dedicated space. Many different kinds of logistics pods share this lane. One of the local pods is carrying an essential component for a community factory in the warehouse district just north of the port. Cargo pods transport materials to factories in these repurposed warehouses. Cargo pods in certain configurations like this one can split themselves into smaller independent autonomous vehicles to complete local deliveries. The warehouse district used to be a space for sorting and distributing for national, state, and citywide logistics operations. Now the warehouse district is a collective sustenance ecosystem of various interacting actors such as office spaces, factories, housing, and social promoting businesses like cafes, breweries, restaurants, and even an active nightlife. One of the split pods coming from the port approaches a community factory co-op that builds furniture. The cargo shipment included a sofa to be refurbished for one of the workers' student homes. Her name is Lola. She brings the sofa in, scans and designs new upholstery, and puts in an order to fabricate it quickly in the production space next door. After warehouses started to be remodeled for affordable housing, the warehouse district became a popular and vibrant residential district for CSU Long Beach students because it is so close to the Westside Town Center. Mobility Hub and CSU Technology Park, which has become the hub of port-related education or job training for CSU Long Beach students. Lola is studying there to get a certificate she needs to move up to working on programming for airship logistics. Although it is on the other side of the city from the main campus, transit across the city is a breeze. She gets a notification that it will start raining in 30 minutes, so she decides to head to campus a little early. Lola gets on her mini scooter and heads over to the one which passes all the way through Long Beach. She merges into the micromobility lane and she looks around at the shops on her right and left as she bikes east. She thinks back to how deserted this area was when she was a kid. She maneuvers over and into the Ocean Boulevard Metro Mobility Center. As of 2035, all local and mid-speed long-range transit is free. All Lola has to do is get on. The vehicles run at very tight intervals, so there is never much of a wait. This time she has waited 3 minutes, which is close to the maximum during peak hours. She puts her bike in an easy bike slot and finds a comfortable seat nearby. She moves past the town center north of downtown as she crosses Pacific Street and Long Beach Boulevard. She sees the skyline of downtown and appreciates her beautiful city right as it starts to rain. Heavy rains during the winter are now commonplace due to climate crisis weather shifts. She moves through the traffic circle district, now a bustling town center, but she can remember when it was a vast and wasted space mostly dedicated to parking lots. The new town center here in the east acts as a hub for the university, the airport, and main mobility arteries, while also servicing all of the surrounding neighborhoods. Just as she is approaching the university, she looks out the window and sees an elderly man fall. She quickly calls 911. For this kind of urgent emergency, a quick response eVTOL is dispatched. The 911 operator initiates emergency protocol which automatically diverts traffic and briefly halts approaching trams since the eVTOL will need to be close to the ground for pickup. The eVTOL arrives at the scene in less than a minute. The health module is lowered and 2 paramedics get down from the eVTOL. They help the old man onto a stretcher and into the health module. The doors close and the module is loaded back into the eVTOL, and it heads over to the hospital. Lola continues to bike through campus on the way to class via the extensive bike lane network that CSU Long Beach has been working the last 20 years to create. While she is in class, we can return back to the port, specifically to the revitalization zone. Here, with the green transition, most of the port's land use has been retrofitted for alternative uses. Incentives help export workers find new opportunities to work in this space through education and apprenticeships. Carlos, a man who used to be a truck driver, now works as an agrivoltaic farm installation specialist, thanks to an education opportunity he received through this program. Those solar panels, as well as other neighboring local energy production facilities, enable large amounts of clean energy to be used by the port and neighboring areas. With large energy production comes the possibility of hydrogen. Oil is on the way out, and the oil refining islands can transition into hydrogen production facilities. With advancements in tech, hydrogen can be produced from ocean water. Local production of hydrogen can help keep costs down for transportation and other uses. Along with energy and production localization, vertical farming allows for the localization of fresh produce. With such a diverse range of activities, the port can improve its economic resiliency. This makes the port more inclusive and less harmful to its surrounding communities while working on installing new 8th-generation solar panels. Carlos sees a container ship arriving at the port. Even with these initiatives, which shrink the port activity, it has not ceased entirely. It continues to use approximately 30% of the space it used in 2020, as Long Beach and the Port of Los Angeles are still important hubs of global trade. The container ships of 2045 look quite different from today. They use massive solid sails for a large part of their long journeys, as well as hydrogen-powered engines. When it arrives at the port, it is filled with locally produced hydrogen for its next leg. An autonomous crane carrier system begins unloading and sorting every container. All containers are tracking enabled, allowing the crane and subsequent container carrier to determine their final locations seamlessly. The carriers quickly load the containers onto their respective rails and distribute the containers across the country and the region. The rails move out of the port on their existing route, which in 2045 cuts through the new green campus. A local artist, Jolanda, is spending her day in the green space and sees the long train of pods leaving out into the distance. She checks her notes one last time for the speech she is preparing for an upcoming art opening in the campus's newly growing art space. She arrived here easily from ArtCenter in Pasadena via an express line, which got to Long Beach so fast that she did not have much time to practice. She has plenty of time now, though. For her last leg in Long Beach, she chose a small form shared autonomous vehicle so that she could get a little extra work in. This area used to be one of the largest oil refinery facilities in the United States. For 200 years, they poisoned the ground and water with toxic waste and spilled oil, harming the community and the environment. Now, after 15 years of cleaning, restructuring, and recreating, it is one of the largest man-made green spaces in Los Angeles. Besides the offices, commercial zones, and cultural spaces, it is a significant research and educational facility as well as a symbol of human resilience. That evening, Jolanda goes on to give her speech. In it, she describes the design of the new rainwater capture systems, already filling steadily since the last rainstorm. Although climate change made the rain in Southern California much more intense over the last 25 years, she praises the city for leaning into clever solutions for flood avoidance through water capture. She talks about how the designers were inspired by the site's original marshland ecosystem. The new green space will now act as a similar sponge. Instead of just a concrete runoff for pollutants, she leaves with simple parting words. We need to evaluate what really needs to change, not what we think we can change. Maybe then, we can give ourselves a fighting chance against the damage we have done to our planet. So let's overview some of the largest changes. Our new town centers and local shops enable smaller and more efficient modes of daily mobility. There will be points of interest and essentials within a short distance of all residents. Our revisioning of the port gives a new option for degrowth, which allows for new space uses and reduced mass goods movement through and around residential areas. Our small business economy changes imagine localized production, which can enable shorter commutes and new jobs during a time-changing industries. Simultaneously, our new systems of local delivery lower the barrier for entry for small businesses to engage in the logistical system. Our Sponge City other green space interventions allow for the city to have new beautiful public spaces and rainwater management systems. Finally, the new multimodal system empowers quick movement across any range, decoupling the idea of freedom from cars and embedding it within methods of small personal and public transit mobility. Thank you so much. Let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I love how it just brought us all into the future and got us immersed in such a bold vision as that. Very compelling, and congratulations. So let's get our panel of experts to weigh in, see what they think. We'll give the next 15 minutes of Q&A over to them in conversation with your team and see where we go from there. With us this morning, Chris Lieben and John Bielenberg with combined expertise in transportation and in design. Chris has been with the LA County Transportation Authority Metro for many years and is at the sustainability helm as Metro's Chief Sustainability Officer. He got us thinking earlier in the fall at the Pando Days Blitz about using bus stops for something more than catching a ride, but as hubs of sustainability. And I should add that Metro is a Pando Days sponsor. Thank you very much, Chris, for your sponsorship and for being here with us. John Bielenberg is legendary in design and design for social good movement. An AIGA gold medalist in 2013, he's been described as a designer, entrepreneur, and imaginative advocate for a better world. He's Pando's founding creative director and on our board of directors. Chris and John, welcome to you both. Chris, let's get started with you. Have we seen the future here this morning?
I think so, Eugene. Thank you so much for having me here today. I sincerely appreciate, the presentation of the team here, and for Lucian and Richard for allowing us to hear, along with their students, what their vision, what the students' vision is of the future. Yeah, I see a lot of parallelisms to what we're thinking about here in LA Metro, and looking forward to the conversation later this morning.
Terrific. John, let's go ahead and bring you in. You're famous for asking folks to outright think wrong when they try to envision what could be. So has the team thought wrong enough from your perspective?
Yeah, maybe. My first thought is the scale. It's just like there are probably 30 big projects in this. It's a huge undertaking to implement any of this. I'm currently reading the new book about Elon Musk, and whether you like him or not, he's kind of a crazy man. But what struck me in the book is how focused he is on coming up with insanely difficult projects, whether it's, electric cars or putting people in space and building rockets. And at first you might think this is nuts, that it's not going to work. And then he's just relentless about executing on his vision. So when I first look at this, I just think, there's no way this is going to, get implemented. So hold that thought for a second. The other thing I was thinking about is the city of Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and how if you go there, there are bikes everywhere. There are more bikes than people on the streets there, and the bike infrastructure and bike parking. And that's new. That wasn't always like that. I can't remember exactly when they started to implement that, but it was a bunch of moms who protested because kids were being hit by cars riding their bikes to work. So that's another example of something that has huge, profound impact that would seem impossible at the beginning. So my question to the team is, what would you do next? Like, what's the next step? In my practice, we have this thing called small bets. So when you come up with a big idea, how do we actually get momentum? How do we move forward by placing a small bet or an affordable loss? So have you thought about that?
Anj, do you maybe want to answer that?
Yeah, we've thought about that, and from our presentation, there are two big ideas that we think can really change. One is based on macro scale, which is the poor degrowth, and basically like trying to move away from poor as this economic engine, which is again like has been a big push for the city. But also has created a lot of negative impacts on the communities and the environment and the societies. And the second microscale implementation is also moving away from the system of automobility, which has created similar impacts on the environment, on the nature, as well as on the communities. And through policy interventions like congestion pricing and starting to like move cars away from the core of the city, as well as introduce introducing car buffer zones, and the ideas of like where people can get away from cars, and maybe there are some sections in the city where we are kind of intentionally shifting them to different modes of transportation.
And to add to that too, I think the one of the biggest emphases we have to moving away from automobility, as we said in the presentation, was decoupling the idea of freedom from cars and really beginning to enable not just mobility, but daily mobility towards public transportation and smaller mobility devices, so that people, these are what we're talking about here in many senses are longer term shifts. They involve both, shifts in infrastructure, but shifts also in social behavior. And so a lot of these ideas require localized economies where people's commute to work is very consistently much shorter than what it is today, so those are some of the, I think if there was a way, in the context of what can we do tomorrow, I think beginning to implement very clear interventions in infrastructure towards micromobility and towards public transportation would be some of the first. Also, I would say in regards to the port, I would say moving towards discussing a lot of these ideas with the authorities of the port, and understanding how that would work. The port itself, I believe in the next 20 years, has its own internal plans to expand, what was it, 3 times its current size. And what we're saying is, not only should that not happen based on what we know about the social and environmental impacts of the port itself already, but we should go the other direction and hopefully give enough other use cases for that space, as well as find alternative methods of, modes of working for the people that are currently working there, so that we're not displacing people from the jobs.
If I can interject, that's a great question, John, to the team here. I did mention earlier that a few of the things that the team had put in their presentation are being thought about in terms of electrification, in terms of workforce development, in terms of newer technologies. I have a multi-part question, and want to focus a little bit on the user interface as well as life cycle, of these technologies. The first one really is, when I go out and talk to folks about alternative forms of transportation, the aging and disabled community had always been, on the forefront of how I think about those. And it's not very clear to me on how this vision could actually accommodate, that demographic, especially, I personally cannot imagine my dad, who's 81 years old, to be riding a bicycle in a high heat day situation, or, someone who, some of my friends who are in wheelchairs, being able to kind of work around in vast expanses of the city without ADA options. So that's one part of it. The other part that I just wanted to mention, and I'll stop, is this whole idea about creating energy, and the whole life cycle of it. And it comes to question, what gives in terms of the transition. Many of the industries that we are talking about here, specifically the carbon intense industries, those people need to transition out of where they are. The infrastructure that they have been using need to transition out of that use for that infrastructure. It needs to be replaced for something else. And in terms of where those placements are in a very compact city or region or jurisdiction, for many parts of the basin here in Los Angeles, it's very real for us as LA Metro to actually think about how we would place these alternative forms of energy and how and what we're going to use the current ones with. So I just want to ask those two, and then maybe there's a few more in there that you could touch upon, based on what your vision is.
To answer the first question, autonomous cars are still going to exist in the future. In Long Beach, cars will exist, as we mentioned. So there's areas in this future where cars exist more than other places. But autonomous cars still will exist, and especially for disabled and elderly people, that will be a very good option. We also, even though we didn't show a lot of really specific designs for public transit vehicles, we did mention the ability to, say, lock in wheelchairs to public transit vehicles. We're hoping that our public transit vehicle options, both in short and long ranges, would be able to accommodate disabled and elderly people and get them as close to where they need to, their final destination is their last mile as possible. Hopefully without the use of mass autonomous vehicles, but also giving that as an option as well, so that people can move around. We didn't delve in it too deeply here. I mean, the scope of this project and what we talked about was so wide, and with the very limited amount of time we had to talk about this, we can't go into everything. The project, we've given presentations on this project since this was a 2-term project that were about 2 hours long in the past. So this is just a really abridged version of it. We even sped up the audio a little bit to fit in so much into so little time. But we are hoping that a mix of small autonomous vehicles and public transportation would fill that gap. And could you quickly say your second question again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's about the energy and the transition of
the transit, right? Yeah.
The whole life cycle of it, including workforce development and infrastructure.
Right. I think we're really hoping that through our analysis of electrical and or electricity and hydrogen, that we can mostly mitigate and continue to mitigate the environmental impacts and continue to run a lot of what we're doing already. But we did generally find that we wanted to push towards sort of degrowth in a lot of these areas, try to find ways of reducing energy use as a whole, yes, there are some examples that we put in of, like large container ships using hydrogen, or agrivoltaic farms in which we're producing energy on site through solar panels. But in general, our aim was to try to lower consumption on the whole in order to mitigate that, and simultaneously, in regards to shifting industries, do as much as we can locally to be through, in this case, CSU Long Beach, to be re-educating people for new jobs as their old jobs disappear. For example, with Carlos, who was a truck driver and who was re-educated into that agrivoltaic farm installation.
I have a quick question on the energy front. Hydrogen versus electricity, is there one better than the other?
I think the answer really lies in what the technology looks like in 20 years. We found that in general, it really depends on the use case, and it also depends on what that technology looks like in the future, as far as like, are we still using lithium and cobalt for batteries? Cobalt mining, for example, and lithium mining are really horrible for the environment and for the places that they are being mined socially and otherwise. At the same time, hydrogen does release, which is an ethical concern, and then hydrogen itself releases considerable amounts of greenhouse gases in the form of H2O vapor. So there's a lot of ups and downs for everything. And again, going back to the statement about degrowth and trying to reduce consumption on the whole, that's really the only answer that we've found to be very consistently consistent, in so much as every single one of these forms of power that we have so far has different significant ramifications. All of them are generally better than fossil fuels, as far as general ethics and general greenhouse gas emissions, but at the same time, it's hard to say anything more than it sort of depends on what those technologies look like in the future, and whether we've managed some of those ethical issues around production. Yeah.
There's so much richness here.
Mhm.
I'd love to keep the conversation going, but time is up. And so I just have to say thank you so much to the ArtCenter Pando Days team. I just love the work you're doing. At this point in the premiere schedule, we've seen 15 of 16 projects developed for the 2023 Pando Days season. We have only one left to go, but it's an amazing one. A project that aims to help the blind and visually impaired better experience nature with the help of technology. It's coming from Cal State LA this Thursday at 10:30, same Zoom link. Log in, you won't want to miss it. Thanks so much once again to our respondents, John Bielenberg and Chris Levin from Metro. Thank you to all the Pando Days colleges and universities that have dedicated full courses, studios, or labs to help LA County meet its sustainability goals. Pando Days was conceived in collaboration with LA's Chief Sustainability Officer Task Force and is in partnership with the county's Chief Sustainability Office. Pando Days is made possible by the support of our sponsors and by the generous contributions from individuals across the Southland and beyond. Thank you for joining with us and enjoy your day.